Hello everyone and welcome to another wonderful game by Bobby Fischer that we still haven't covered on the channel. It's from the 1960 match USA versus the Republic Federation of Germany, and Fischer faces at the time international master Klaus Darga. He got his international master title in 1957. This is played in 1960 and he will get his grandmaster title at 1964. Klaus is still alive today. He's 90 years old. And as I understand it, he retired from chess and started working in IBM as a programmer. But to give you an idea of what kind of a player he was, how strong he was, well, he plays the French defense, which is something that we know that Fischer struggled with, especially in his early days. And this is 17-year-old Bobby Fischer. Klaus is, I believe, 27 years old. At the time this was played, but Klaus defeated some incredible players throughout his career. He defeated Larsen, he defeated Portisch, he defeated Leonid Stein, which I'm sure you guys know. I mean, what an incredible player. He defeated world champion Boris Spassky. Okay, before he became world champion, but not a lot before. He defeated Spassky in 1964, so some 4 years after this game was played. So incredibly strong player, and he plays the French against Fischer. Really a wonderful game, and we will get some more insight and some more ideas on how to attack the French defense, not just by the standard queen to g4 against the Winawer, but also some other lines. So let's check it out. Fischer with white opens with pawn to e4. Klaus replies with pawn to e6. We have pawn to d4 and pawn to d5. We have knight to c3, and now bishop to b4, the Winawer variation of the French. Pawn to e5, pawn to c5, and pawn to a3. Going after the bishop right away, we have captures, and now knight to e7, where you can opt for some very nice ideas like queen to g4. This is by far still the main line. You can play knight to f3, you can play pawn to h3, but Fischer goes for pawn to a4. This is the Smyslov variation against the Winawer French, and it is a move that is, as they say, largely responsible for Botvinnik's giving up on the Winawer variation of the French. Okay, queen to c7. Fischer says, I may yet be forced to admit that the Winawer is sound, but I doubt it. The defense is anti-positional and weakens the king side. Fischer also comments on this game in his book, My 60 Memorable Games, and it is game 24 in that book. We have knight to f3 and pawn to b6, bishop to b5 with check. With this pawn to b6 move, of course, you are preparing bishop to a6 to counter the light square bishop, as black's light square bishop isn't really all that impressive. So by playing bishop to b5 check, you are preventing that. Either black will now play knight to d7, and then the knight no longer helps the bishop come to a6, or you will play bishop to d7, like was played in the game, and then Fischer can just move the bishop back. Or you could play king to f8, which is something, let's say, Yanni Pomnichu would play in 2024, but you know, those were the early days. We have bishop to d7, bishop to d3, and knight b to d6. Fischer castles kingside, and now there are two moves you could consider here. You could consider pawn to h6, and you could consider pawn to c4. Now, pawn to c4 is the top move recommended by even today's engines, and it is the move that Klaus plays. Takes away the strong diagonal from the light square bishop. Fischer goes bishop to e2, and now pawn to f6. So these are all ideas that you have to know if you play the French, whether it's okay to play the seemingly anti-positional c4, whether b6 is useful or not, whether you can, whether and when you can execute f6. But of course, a strong French player will know these things. We have bishop to a3 by Fischer. This is a pawn sacrifice, but one that gives Fischer great counterplay, and you could accept it or you could decline it with knight to f5. Now, in the game, the pawn sacrifice was accepted. I'm just going to show you what happens if you don't accept it. Let's say you go knight f5, rook to e1, and now castles queenside. Pawn to g4 attacks the knight, and now after, let's say, knight h6 going after the pawn, you play bishop to d6, and after queen b7, a5, and this is well, this is anyone's game. It's white could have maybe a little bit of an edge, but with with good play, there are chances for both sides here. So after bishop to e3, Klaus decided to play f captures on e5. He accepts the pawn. Fischer captures back on e5, and now comes knight captures on e5. And there are some other moves that were played here, but as of knight captures on e5, we have a completely new game. as of move 14. So what can Fischer do here? Well, he could just trade, for example, captures, and then play rook to e1. But he wants to keep the tension on the board. He plays rook to e1. And rook to e1, what it essentially does is it prepares to win the black queen. For example, if black plays a weird move, you just play knight captures on e5, or, to win the piece, because if queen captures, you have bishop h5 check, and you win the queen. That's all there is to it. Or queen captures, then queen captures back on h5. So what you have to play after this rook to e1 move by Fischer is something you don't really want to do. You have to play knight back to c6. It wasn't played in the game. Klaus decided to play knight 7 to c6, sort of to keep the knight on the active e5 square, but you have to do it like this. And only then, after knight g5, going after the e6 pawn, castles kingside with bishop to g4, and now, okay, you have to give some material back, but it's not a problem. Rook f6, bishop captures with check, bishop captures, rook captures, knight captures, and queen e5 will get the job done. If you play queen e1, offer a queen trade, even queen to f6, and the game continues, it's a good position for both sides. But after rook to e1, Klaus decided to keep the knight on the active square, played knight 7 to c6, and now Fischer has a winning position. Knight captures on e5, knight captures on e5, but again, we reach that moment in time where Fischer again shows why he struggles against the French. And it's not just Fischer, everyone struggles against the French. Positions that arise from the Winawer French are so complicated that I have yet to see a single person who understands them. Everyone makes bad calls here, and so does Fischer. Here, I'm not going to tell you what he played. First, pause the video and, what would you play here? If you had white here, what do you play? If you found this move, truly congratulations. You've found a winning move that Bobby Fischer hasn't. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is bishop to h5 check. Fischer often said, Patzer sees a check, Patzer gives a check, but here it's in fact the winning move. The problem with blocking with the knight is that you can play queen captures on d5, and this is just terrible for black. All of these threats in the position, even rook captures on e5, e6 should be winning, and if you castle queenside, there's even queen to a8 with check, and if queen b8, there's queen to e4, and the position is just terrible. The bishop slicing this way, this bishop can come to f3, you can play a5, you can play rook a to b1, rook e to b1. This will be a game over quickly. And if you don't block with the knight, if you block with the pawn, well, then not a problem. You will simply play queen to d4, and you will offer the bishop for this knight. And if castle's queenside, you just capture on e5, black will capture here, and you will play pawn to a5, and again, you will break through and win the game. But Fischer did not find it. After this knight captures on e5 move and knight captures on e5, Fischer played pawn to f4. And while this is very nice, it's not exactly winning for Fischer. And interestingly, in his book, My 60 Memorable Games, he does not even mention this moment in the book after this knight captures on e5 was played. So no time was given to this bishop to h5 move. I think Fischer was so disgusted with the French defense that he couldn't even comment on the moves that he missed in the games. So pawn to f4, we have knight back to c6, and now Fischer played pawn to g4. Okay, he does not go for the win, he will win back the pawn. We have castles queenside, bishop captures on e6, and now bishop captures on e6. And here Klaus succumbs to Fischer's, I would say brilliancy, but he did miss a move. So let's call it persistency. He should play rook h to e8. This is what holds the game. And then Fischer plays pawn to f5, and okay, the game continues. But he played bishop captures on e6. Fischer played rook captures, and now the problem is you cannot play this because just captures, and queen captures on d5. So rook to d7 was played, and now pawn to f5, knight to d8 going after Fischer's rook, and rook to e3. And here queen to f4. Fischer even mentions in the book that Klaus is defending very vigorously, that he's finding all of the top moves. Rook to f3, queen to e4, and now pawn to a5. And here with pawn to b5, it's still, well, in the book Fischer says it's an equal game. It's not really. White is better after pawn to a6, but pawn to d4 does give you some very, very active counterplay. Or probably at Fischer's level, it's even equal. Who knows how far Fischer understood this position. After pawn to a5, knight to c6 was played, and now comes a captures on b6, a captures, and now queen to b1. And there is no more defending this position, but you still have to play perfect moves for Fischer in order to win. Klaus defended with king to c7, and now it's a very tricky position. Only one move wins. Feel free to pause the video and win the game for Fischer while I give you a couple of seconds. Congratulations, as I imagine all of you found it, and for those of you who haven't, it is bishop to c1. The key is to reach the f4 square, and then it's all over. Bishop to c1 was played by Fischer, but this also means that he allows queen to e1 check. He no longer has control over the back rank. So okay, queen to e1 check, and also interestingly, if knight to e5, sort of stopping bishop to f4 seemingly indefinitely, still bishop to f4, and now after, let's say, rook to e8, you will play queen to b5, and there's just no good defense here against rook to a7. If the king moves, then you can capture on b6. The knight cannot move. If the king moves, also the rook will be hanging because the knight cannot move. So there are no moves here. That's why in the game, queen to e1 check was played, rook to f1, and now queen captures on c3, and now comes bishop to f4 with check. We have king to b7, and now again only one move wins the game, but I'm pretty sure you guys know which one it is. Have at it while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations, you truly are a master of crushing the Winawer French. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is queen to b5. This is what Fischer played, and he was in this position on move 30 that Klaus Darga resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. There are many moves that win this, but the real question is what is the threat? Well, the threat is, as you can see, the bishop covers these two squares. Queen to a6 will be checkmate. You will control these two squares and also these two squares. So those are all of the squares around the black king. And the only real way of defending, well, you could play queen d4 check and give up the queen for the bishop, but we're not going to discuss those moves. The real question is what happens after rook to a8. Well, nothing much. You will simply capture, and after captures, queen a6 check, and now after, okay, knight blocks, you will play queen captures on b6, threaten checkmate, and after the rook blocks, now you will win some material. If rook here, then checkmate, and if knight here, then you win the knight, and very, very quickly checkmate the black king. You are now up a piece, and of course completely winning. So Klaus did not want to continue. After queen b5, he resigned, and a very, very nice victory for Bobby Fischer against the French Winawer. Now, this is a game I still haven't shown on the channel. I found it in a book, not the My 6 Memorable Games. I have another one with that features all of the games that Fischer played. I was teaching my 3-year-old daughter some chess. We were, setting up the board here and there, and then, she lost interest in like 10 minutes, and then I was, I opened the book, I was browsing over some games, and I found, okay, it's a nice game against the French. Haven't seen it yet. I played it on the board, and I was like, okay, I mean, it's beautiful. I have to show it. And I mean, if you guys want to learn about Fischer's games, if you want to replay, rewatch, re-experience Fischer games, you should really do them on a physical board. A wooden one would be nice, but any board you have, it just hits different than when you see it on a screen like this. I imagine you are watching this on a screen, but yeah, I mean, if you can replay it on the board, it will also be a way for you to sort of move the moves with Fischer. Really is a different experience. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. As usual, very nicely done by Bobby Fischer. I would like to thank Benjamin Nerkot, Andy Flint, Uzi Shalev, Michael Hoff, and James Eugene Cashman for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. Really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.